And this brings me to the final point that I wanted to make in this video that I have not heard anybody mention. There's been a lot of disturbing chatter online from people who mostly don't have profile pictures or posts on their account, saying that somehow because these men are worth millions or billions of dollars, they deserve what they got. But what nobody seems to be acknowledging is that we as a globe are collectively witnessing one of the most fundamental truths about human existence. Privilege doesn't really exist. It's a social construct, if you will.
So you watched this whole thing basically play out, and your conclusion from that was that it is proof that privilege doesn't exist. Doesn't. With the aid of two countries.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I sit on my bed, my couch, and I give you the full tea. And then if you're new here, this is what we do in the most tasteful manner, in the most respectful manner. But we give the opinion regardless. People do it all the time, but we give it in class and style. Alright? Before load shedding happens, and if it happens while we're doing this, then we'll catch up in the next video when the lights are back. Right? Alright. Now, the reason why I was telling you guys that I did not care about the submarine is because of this ignorance that this white man says. He spew things out of his ass instead of sticking to announcing the news of what's happening in the submarine thing. And this is why I never even discussed it. I waited when it got out of fashion. I didn't want to talk about this now. Like, sincerely, I did not want to talk about this now, because there were a time when I told you guys, load shedding, I'll be back when the lights are back. I guess it's obvious that the lights are back now. The lights are back. I was resting, I was taking a nap. And let's continue where we were. Well, where were we? Before 2 hours ago? Right. This is why I don't like having discussions with white people, because most of the time they're delusional. They don't think outside of the reality that we all live in, the rest of us live in. They live in a different reality. They definitely live in something else completely different from where we live. I don't know, man. I don't know. But anyways, guys, let me know your opinion, because this guy is sinking. Is sinking. Warasa wena man.
The sub that went missing on its excursion to the Titanic wreckage only has 5 hours left of oxygen for the 5 men on board. So even if they're found at this instant as I'm posting this video, there's still the 2.5 hour trip that they have to make from the bottom of the ocean floor to the surface of the ocean. Now TikTok maybe help me out here, because I actually haven't been able to find any concrete numbers online on how long it takes to get from the bottom to the surface of the ocean, but we do know that the journey from the surface of the ocean to the Titanic's location is a 2.5 hour dive. Which means rescuers only have 2.5 hours from the time I'm posting this video to find them. So with this in mind, there's still a chance they could be recovered and survive, but we're probably looking at a recovery mission from here on out. But while there's still a sliver of hope alive, let's cover a few things we know and a few things that I have not heard anybody mention or talk about. First, we have a few new details thanks to TikToker The Austin Ayers, who's been tracking this situation in real time, and he's been looking at ships on location in the Atlantic. And according to him, there's a submersible robot called the Victor 6000. It's on the scene now, it has movable robotic arms, and it might be able to free the trapped sub if it's stuck on the debris of the Titanic itself. And it's on its way to the ocean floor as we speak. The third thing to consider is by the time I post this, it's either dusk or heading into the evening in the area that those ships are looking for that submarine. If they do manage to find them on the ocean floor and help bring them back up to the surface, the extraction of the crew is going to happen with literal minutes to spare in terms of the oxygen that they have available on board, and that extraction process is going to happen in the middle of the night. Which brings us to one of the most disturbing things about all of this is if the crew is still alive, there's at least 2 men on board who know exactly how much oxygen they have, and they're also acutely aware of the fact that 4 oxygen users or 3 oxygen users is better than 5 oxygen users. And at this point, they know that reducing the number of oxygen users on board could mean the difference between life or death for the others. And if you think they are not having these conversations, or at the very least these thoughts down there, you are out of your mind. And this brings me to the final point that I wanted to make in this video that I have not heard anybody mention. There's been a lot of disturbing chatter online from people who mostly don't have profile pictures or posts on their account, saying that somehow because these men are worth millions or billions of dollars, they deserve what they got. But what nobody seems to be acknowledging is that we as a globe are collectively witnessing one of the most fundamental truths about human existence. Privilege doesn't really exist. It's a social construct, if you will. Because as human beings, our circumstances can shift massively in an instant, and that's life. That's how this ride goes for all of us. Every single person watching this video that I'm making right now has infinitely more options and opportunities ahead of them when compared to the men that are in that submarine right now. Their money no longer matters, and you are out of your mind if you think they wouldn't trade every single penny that they have to switch spots with you or with me, with our boring, mundane, unextraordinary little lives. They would give it all up right now, I guarantee you, if they knew they could escape their watery prison and switch spots with us. Because these men, despite their wealth, are now the unluckiest human beings on the face of the planet. Because there's very low likelihood that they'll get rescued. And sure, we can all admit that there's some hubris and some arrogance that went into the decisions that led them to the position that they find themselves in now. But the people who are arguing that the crew of the Titan had it coming to them somehow are missing the harsh reality of what it is to be human. We are all here for just a little bit, and the time that we all have ahead of us isn't going to be enjoyable unless we take some risks along the way, whether for pleasure or whether to shore up some sense of security for ourselves in the future. But if you are taking those risks, you are always in danger of winding up in a place that you cannot bounce back from, just like these men. There's a metaphor here for life, because this concept is true for all of us, whether you have $1 billion in the bank or $1 in your pocket. And the media and pop culture do a great job of convincing us that this isn't the case, that we're all somehow different than each other. But we're not. Not when you get down to it. Not when we all collectively realize that money is the thing that trapped these men at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and the lack of money may just be the thing that prevented you or me from being in their exact position. So who's really privileged in this situation? It's something that's worth taking a deep breath and a second to think about.
So you watched this whole thing basically play out, and your conclusion from that was that it is proof that privilege doesn't exist. Doesn't. With the aid of 2 countries, we looked for 5 people that went 12,000 feet underwater in a tiny submarine and found them in a few days, while 500 migrants who went missing in the Coast Guard of Greece are still missing, and no one seems to be looking for them anymore. To make matters even worse, it wasn't like they didn't know anything about the ship. They had GPS, satellite, cameras, and 12 naval officers standing in front of monitors watching this thing like a hawk because it was full of refugees. 500 people to 5. A couple of days to what is going to be now a week, and you think there's no privilege. Even getting to the fact that apparently the Greeks might be responsible for the ship sinking in the first place because they were trying to tow this thing from Greece to Italy, according to some of the witnesses that were there. Or the fact that this company was already under fire and in a lawsuit specifically because of their safety and the potential dangers to passengers. A lawsuit, by the way, that was being brought by the company against a former employee who they wrongfully fired for blowing the whistle on the fact that their safety regulations aren't up to par. Someone tried to prevent this from happening and the company fired him. And so then when he whistle blew and tried to get everyone else to know about the dangers, they sued him. This entire situation just reeks of privilege. the media, who now for some reason seem to be interested in the disappearance of the migrants, but specifically to juxtapose the coverage of both incidents, even though they're the ones who were doing the covering in the first place. Or the fact that this tiny submarine has been found now, where a ship carrying more than 500 people is still missing and hundreds of people are still missing. Even the director of the Human Rights Watch Europe and Central Asian Division came out to say that it's a horrifying and disgusting contrast. And I quote, "The willingness to allow certain people to die while every effort is made to save others, it's a really dark reflection on humanity. It would have been so much better if the point you're trying to get across is that privilege can only go so far, but the truth is it goes as far as the human touch. It goes as far as human interaction can." In that video, you said about the men who are now deceased that they were the unluckiest people on earth. And I think that right there says everything I need to know about your mindset. By the way, this is what the now deceased CEO has to say about safety, specifically as it pertains to his firm a couple of years ago. Yep. It's a tragedy.